Listen carefully, because what's happening right now could impact the Whittakers more than any content creator, documentary, or donation ever has. And the worst part is this didn't start with neglect, abuse, or even the government stepping in on their own. This started with money, not money they earned, but money given to them. Donations, gifts, a supposed blessing from the outside world. And now, that blessing might be putting their welfare status in jeopardy. Let's break it down, starting with the one thing almost nobody considers when they send the Whittakers money: government assistance rules. They aren't like charity. They aren't gifts. They aren't emotional support. They're contracts, legal agreements. And when you're part of that system, SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, food stamps, you can't just collect cash from the internet like you're a regular influencer. And yet people are throwing money at them like they're celebrities. The Whittakers depend on SSI. That means they receive benefits because they cannot earn or maintain income above a certain limit. Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine qualify due to lifelong disability. Betty receives benefits as a caretaker. Those 4 people in that house survive because of a system designed for individuals who cannot work and cannot manage finances on their own. And here's what many don't realize. Money given to them counts as income if it's accessible to them. If a donation is traceable to their name, their card, or their household, that income can reduce their benefits. If it's a large amount, it can cancel them altogether. So when the internet started donating thousands, yes, thousands, the question became unavoidable. Who is accepting this money? Whose name is it under? And does that name risk their welfare status? Now, here's the twist. Many people assume the controversy is only about the 2 content creators accused of pocketing funds. People are blaming Eric, Patrick, and even Brian, debating who is the villain and who's the hero. Meanwhile, the real crisis is brewing in the background. Were some gifts large enough to threaten the Whittakers' benefits? Because the more money that people claim they raise for them, the more likely the state is now asking questions. If donations exceeded SSI limits, if someone close to the family accepted the money with the intention of giving it to them later, if the money was deposited, even temporarily, into an account connected to a family member, if someone made a trust without proper documentation, then the state doesn't simply demand receipts. The state may legally interfere in how welfare beneficiaries are treated. And that kind of involvement can trigger investigations that affect everything around them, including guardianship, living arrangements, and yes, even custody of disabled adults. Sound familiar? Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine were removed by Adult Protective Services. Nobody knows the official reason, but the timing is almost impossible to ignore. The removals happened after months of donation confusion, accusations, and viral arguments between creators. It didn't happen when the house was falling apart for years. It didn't happen when BJ's chaos was at its peak. It didn't even happen during the first famous documentary. It happened right after the donation war. People were arguing about who owes the Whittakers money. The media started covering it, and suddenly APS just happened to show up. Then the state stepped in and removed 3 disabled adults from their home without giving the family a clear explanation. Ask yourself, was this coincidence? Or did the government step in because of the money trail? The more attention the donation scandal received, the more it forced the state to examine whether this family was being financially exploited. And when a disabled adult's assistance is threatened by potential exploitation, the government's first response isn't to fix it. It's to take control. So imagine you're Betty. You've taken care of your family your whole life. You were promised money, then told it was being held for your safety. You don't understand the rules. You don't understand contracts. You don't understand digital bank transfers or monetization systems. Then one day, the state shows up and takes your siblings and your son. No explanation, no visits, no updates, nothing, because someone else took money in your name. It doesn't matter if the money was for you. It doesn't matter if the people meant well. It doesn't even matter if the content creator stole it or planned to give it to you later. As far as the state is concerned, the Whittakers' welfare status may have been compromised. Here's the real question nobody is discussing. If that money was meant for them, if it was raised using their image, if it was solicited using their disabilities, then who held it? And did that action trigger APS involvement? And if so, what happens now? Because if the state believes the Whittakers were financially exploited, then they don't just pursue creators. They can take control of the very people they're protecting. They can stop their access to their own money. They can enforce guardianship. They can separate them from caretakers they believe can't protect them. This means that even if someone eventually pays what they owe, even if creators suddenly produce receipts, even if money shows up today, it might not fix anything. It might be too late. Money was supposed to save this family. Instead, it may have handed control of their lives to the state. The donation war might prove to be the single biggest disaster the Whittakers ever faced. Bigger than poverty, bigger than exploitation, bigger than outsider curiosity. And it didn't happen because people didn't care. It happened because they cared recklessly. Before we continue into the bigger mess, contracts, criminal probes, trust accounts, and the real story behind APS involvement, just think about this. If the same people who donated to help the Whittakers actually cost them their benefits, then who is to blame? The donors? The content creators? The state? Or all of them? Comment below. Do you think donations helped or hurt the Whittakers? And when money is raised using someone's image, name, or disability, the government doesn't just see that as gifts. They see it as income connected to exploitation. That's where the danger escalates. The donation drama, more than just missing money. Most people following the Whittaker story believe the crisis is as simple as: did the creators steal the money? Did they owe the family money? Who was supposed to hand it over? But the truth is deeper than whether someone scammed them. The real issue is that the money existed at all under unclear ownership. Let's break this down the way the government sees it. Step 1. A YouTuber films a disabled family. They use their image to build an audience and earn ad revenue. Step 2. YouTubers start asking viewers for donations to help the family. Money now becomes legally connected to representations of disability and need. Step 3. The funds are collected by a person who is not disabled in their own account. That means someone else is handling disability-related funds. Under U.S. law, that is a red flag for potential exploitation. Step 4. The disabled people the money was raised for do not receive the funds. This is where the state gets involved, not just because money is missing, but because a vulnerable class, disabled adults under government protection, has become financially connected to an unregulated individual. This entire sequence can legally trigger guardianship reviews, exploitation investigations, welfare audits, and immediate intervention by APS. Meaning, the moment those creators accepted a donation in the Whittakers' name, they stepped into a legal minefield. The Whittakers were never prepared for this. For years, the family survived on federal support. They never needed to worry about bank accounts, tax forms, property titles, or social media monetization. They weren't financially equipped to handle any significant donation or trust, and they didn't have legal guidance. So when outsiders arrived and offered them financial help, they unknowingly stepped into dangerous territory. Imagine being raised your whole life without dealing with taxes, contracts, licensing, or business decisions, and suddenly people from the internet want to give you a house, a vehicle, and thousands of dollars. You don't just risk losing benefits. You risk losing legal autonomy. And that's exactly where the controversy now points. The state's perspective: exploitation or mismanagement. When a vulnerable adult receives, or is supposed to receive, money from third parties, the state asks three main questions. Was the money allowed to influence their welfare eligibility? Was someone taking advantage of them financially? Were they being properly protected by their caretakers? If the answer to any of these is unclear, the government can temporarily remove the vulnerable adults to protect them while they investigate. This aligns eerily with what happened to Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine. They weren't removed because someone wanted to punish the family. They may have been removed because their benefits were at risk. Their caregivers, Betty and Larry, could not legally manage donation funds. The donation scandal became public, forcing government intervention. People think APS just showed up, but agencies don't suddenly appear unless they have a reason. Something triggered action, more likely an official complaint tied to the money, not random concern for their living conditions. If that were the case, they'd have been taken years ago. Who triggered it? The question everyone is quietly thinking, but no one wants to say out loud. Did someone involved, maybe a donor or creator, contact authorities? Not maliciously, but out of frustration? Think about it. The content creators accused each other publicly. Viewers blew up comment sections with demands. Media outlets released articles claiming $100,000 plus was mishandled. Any one of those things could have led a viewer or journalist to report it to state officials, believing they were helping. But if they didn't fully understand welfare laws, their help could have caused harm. So, who's really at fault? Let's look at all sides. The creators. Some clearly collected money without the knowledge or legal authority to handle disability-related funds. Others may have meant well, but didn't understand the system they were interfering with. The fans/donors. Many sent donations without realizing they could legally count as income. Some pressured creators into giving the money now, unwittingly pushing illegal transfers. The state. They intervened without transparency. They didn't communicate with the remaining family. They separated siblings without explaining their rights. The Whittakers. They didn't understand financial or legal risk. But that doesn't make them wrong. It means they were never given knowledge or protection. So who's responsible? All of them, and none of them. Because this wasn't driven by greed alone. This was driven by a lack of understanding. Ignorance, not evil. Carelessness, not cruelty. People thought kindness was as simple as cash. They didn't realize that when you hand money to someone living under government protection, you're handing them a legal trap. What happens now? Once a welfare investigation begins, there are possible outcomes. Benefits could be reduced for those still at home. The separated Whittakers may stay under guardianship for years. The family may never be reunited full-time. If a trust is created without proper structure, the money could be locked away permanently. A neutral third-party conservator could be put in charge instead of Betty or Larry. That's the tragedy. The money that was supposed to save the Whittakers may end up belonging to a system, not to the people who were filmed. And here's the bitter irony. If no one had donated a single dollar, the family might still be together. Before part 3, think about this. The Whittakers didn't ask for fame. They didn't ask for donations. They didn't ask for documentaries or fanbase wars. They didn't ask to be fixed. They were living their life, their way, in a home they understood, under a system they depended on. And outsiders changed everything. The next part will dig into the legal consequences, the whispered rumors about APS, and the growing fear that this separation may not be temporary. Before we go there, comment below. Should disabled adults on welfare be protected from donations, or should they be allowed to receive them freely? Your opinion might be more important than you think. The moment outside money became attached to their identity, the Whittakers stopped being seen as private citizens and became a legal case. A vulnerable group, a protected class, a state concern. And once the government steps in, they don't just walk away. They investigate, and they make decisions that can shape the rest of someone's life. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for worse, and sometimes with consequences that feel like punishment, even when the intention is protection. How APS looks at the Whittakers. APS, Adult Protective Services, isn't a charity and it isn't a rescue unit. It's a legal authority that primarily protects vulnerable adults from neglect, financial exploitation, inability to care for themselves, dangerous environments, manipulation by others. It doesn't matter whether the exploitation was intentional or accidental. If money was raised using the names or disabilities of vulnerable adults, and that money was not legally protected through an appropriate trust, APS considers it a red flag. So when viewers saw creators raising money, promising solutions, and publicly arguing with each other, APS didn't need a confession to intervene. They only needed suspicion. What state guardianship really means. When the Daily Mail and New York Post reported that Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine were under state guardianship, many thought this meant temporary care, like foster care for adults. But that phrase has a deeper meaning within welfare law. A person under guardianship cannot make financial decisions, cannot control their own healthcare choices, cannot sign legal contracts, may be moved at the state's discretion, may be restricted from living with certain relatives. This wasn't merely a relocation. This was a legal designation that changes who has authority over their lives. Before all of this, Betty acted as the family's de facto guardian. Larry helped when needed, but no paperwork was in place. It was informal, based on family roles. Government systems don't accept informal guardianship when a legal incident occurs. They require documentation, oversight, and state control. Suddenly, decades of family dynamics were wiped away. A signature they never signed, on a petition they never saw, resulted in a legal shift that took away their independence. Were they removed for safety or for liability? This is where the situation gets uncomfortable. When APS removes vulnerable adults, it usually happens for one of two reasons. They are in danger: violence, neglect, abuse, unsafe conditions. The state fears legal liability if something happens to them. Look at that second one closely. APS may have removed Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine not because they were unsafe, but because their sudden internet fame created legal risk for the government itself. Think about it. Donations were collected illegally or questionably. Their environment became public news. Their disabilities were broadcast without regulation. Their living conditions were displayed to millions. Their identities were monetized by outsiders. If something happened to them now, as wards of a government assistance program, the state could be blamed for negligence and sued. By removing them, APS protected itself as much as it protected them. What about Betty and Larry? Why were they left behind? Many wonder, if conditions were so bad, why wasn't Betty removed too? Why is Larry still on the property? Why separate the family? The answer may be bureaucratic rather than emotional. Betty and Larry are competent adults with speech ability and physical mobility. They aren't considered incapacitated in the same way as the others. That means APS can't remove them without consent or a court ruling that they are mentally incompetent. Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine are different legally because they cannot clearly advocate for themselves, cannot reliably communicate danger, cannot manage money or medical care independently. APS is required to intervene if exploitation or mismanagement is suspected. Could Larry be considered an unfit caregiver? Here is another uncomfortable angle. Once the media and online accusations began circling, APS would have looked into every person involved, including Larry. And the government doesn't view family sentiment the way regular people do. They don't ask, does he love them? They ask, does he have the financial literacy to manage donated funds? Is he able to provide safe supervision? Was he involved in decisions that risked welfare status? Did he enable someone like BJ to steal, manipulate, or cause danger? Even if Larry did nothing malicious, even if he was trying to protect the family, APS may see him as someone who failed to prevent exploitation, not someone who caused it. And in legal terms, failure to protect can be treated nearly the same as exploitation. The elephant in the room, the BJ effect. BJ wasn't just a troubled relative. They may see her as a catalyst. Whether that's accurate or not doesn't matter. APS only needs perceived risk. She admitted drug issues. She was accused of violent behavior on camera. She was tied to theft cases. She stayed on the property. She handled money and property given to the family. That looks like danger to APS. It paints a picture of a chaotic and unstable environment. Even though Betty may love her niece deeply, and even if she never wanted her gone, the state doesn't take emotion into account. They take liability into account. A judge doesn't say she's family. A judge says she's a threat to vulnerable adults. Once that label is applied, even unofficially, the state can remove those adults immediately without waiting for court trials. Could the family fight and win back guardianship? Technically, yes. Realistically, it's difficult. To regain guardianship, someone, most likely Betty or Larry, would need to hire a qualified attorney, prove they can provide stable supervision, show control over who is allowed on the property, demonstrate safe management of funds, show financial literacy training, provide evidence of ongoing support systems, prove that no exploitation is happening or could happen again. These are intense requirements for people who have lived all their lives without legal or financial education. And an attorney could cost thousands, money they do not have. What if they receive their donation money now? If any lump sum is transferred to their names now, the following could happen. SSI stripped, Medicaid stripped, food stamps stripped. State guardianship extended. The money placed under state conservatorship. The family forced to pay medical bills with donated funds. Meaning, The government could use the money meant for fixing their lives to cover state expenses instead. The donor's money could end up replacing welfare costs, not helping the Whittakers. This is how a good intention becomes a government asset. Is there any safe path forward? Yes, but it requires more than compassion. It requires structure. There are only two safe ways for funds to benefit disabled adults receiving SSI and Medicaid. A special needs trust, S&T, must be managed by a qualified attorney or trust specialist. Funds cannot be controlled by the beneficiary. Funds must only improve quality of life, not replace welfare payments. Requires yearly accounting. An ABLE account, if they qualify. A tax-advantaged account for people with disabilities. Has contribution limits and rules. Must be managed properly. Doesn't always fit every situation. But here's the final difficulty. You can't create a trust for someone unless a legal guardian approves it on their behalf. And now, the guardian is the state. Will the state use donations to help them? Maybe. But legally, the state is not obligated to build them a home, improve their quality of life, restore their living conditions, provide luxuries, reunite the family. The only obligation the state has is to keep them alive, keep them fed, keep them medically stable, keep them in a supervised environment. No law requires joy. No law requires dignity beyond minimum standard. No law requires family unity. That's the cold reality of protective systems. They're built for survival, not for life. Will the Whittakers ever live together again? This depends on one question. Can someone with legal authority step in and defend their right to be together? If a trust is properly formed, legal guardianship is contested, a neutral guardian or co-guardian is appointed, support systems are established, community advocates get organized, and conditions are improved enough to meet state standards, then yes, reunification could happen. But without support, without legal help, without structure, the separation could quietly become permanent. Many welfare guardianships end with siblings spending the rest of their lives apart. Not because anyone wanted that, but because no one legally reversed it. Before Part 4, consider this. The Whittakers' crisis isn't about dirt roads or broken porches. It isn't about donated money. It isn't about online drama. It isn't even about BJ, Larry, or Betty. This is a battle between compassion versus bureaucracy, community versus the system, family choices versus state control. And the outcome depends not on outrage, but on organization. Part 4 will explore whether the community can help legally, ethically, and safely, without risking the family's benefits, dignity, or unity. We'll also look at who might step up, how donors could still help responsibly, and what it would take to reunite everyone. Before we go there, comment below. Should the state have the power to separate disabled adults from their family because of financial mismanagement, even if no abuse was intended? Why or why not? The truth has been laid bare. The Whittakers stand at a crossroads shaped not only by poverty, disability, and family challenges, but by the collision between human intention and government systems. What comes next is not simply a question of charity or compassion. It's a battle over autonomy, dignity, and control. 3 vulnerable adults, Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine, have been removed and placed under state guardianship. Betty and Larry remain on the property, missing them, confused, and without answers. Donations are frozen. Their welfare status is scrutinized, and the public watches, unsure who to blame or how to help. Now we face the most important question. Is there a way to help this family without harming them further? To answer that, we have to examine what help really means and who should provide it. The biggest mistake: charity without responsibility. Everyone wanted to be the hero. They wanted to buy food, donate money, fix roofs, build homes, film clips, act generous, and change lives. But they skipped the most crucial step, asking what the Whittakers could legally handle. They were living under federal poverty programs and disability benefits. That means every dollar raised without planning, every donation deposited incorrectly, every GoFundMe handled the wrong way, put their lifeline at risk. Think of it like medicine. Charity, if administered incorrectly, becomes poison. What the public saw as help, the government saw as financial exploitation, unregulated income, failure to protect disabled adults, lack of legal oversight. Because of that mismanagement, intentional or not, the family lost each other. That makes this situation heartbreaking, but also deeply preventable. The path forward, protection and autonomy. If the Whittakers are ever going to rebuild, two things must happen at the same time. They must be protected from financial abuse and legal consequences. They must not lose their identity, privacy, or right to remain together. That balance is the key, and achieving it requires expertise, not emotion, which means the next stage must involve attorneys who specialize in disability and trust law, advocates who understand impoverished communities, a neutral financial guardian, not a YouTuber, not a relative, not a fan, a structured system that protects income without destroying welfare. This is not a job for influencers or well-meaning strangers. This is the job of professionals. What a real solution looks like. Let's break it down step by step. This is what a responsible, ethical plan for the Whittakers would look like. Step 1. A Special Needs Trust, S&T. Funds donated cannot go directly to any Whittaker. Instead, they must be placed into a special needs trust, legally designed so. They keep Medicaid and SSI. The state cannot seize the money. Funds are only used for quality of life improvements. Receipts and audits are required to prove compliance. This trust should be managed by a professional with no emotional or financial ties to the family. No YouTuber, no fan, no neighbor, not even Larry or Betty. A trust removes temptation and eliminates accusations of theft. It stops exploitation before it happens, not after. Step 2. Petition for co-guardianship. The state currently holds guardianship over Ray, Timmy, and Lorraine. To reunite them, a co-guardian must be appointed. A neutral, licensed adult guardian, working alongside the state, who advocates for family reunification, but keeps the family accountable. This guardian would be legally obligated to facilitate safe contact between siblings, oversee visits, ensure living standards remain safe, prevent financial mismanagement, protect them from predatory individuals. This is how autonomy is restored without removing protection. Step 3. A registered nonprofit for ongoing support. Instead of random donations, a small nonprofit could be formed. It wouldn't belong to a creator, a politician, or a fan. It would belong to the mission. The nonprofit's purpose. Fund improvements approved by the trust. Hire support workers if needed. Advocate with APS and DSS. Provide oversight without exploitation. Educate the public on disability rights and poverty ethics. A nonprofit builds consistency instead of viral chaos. Step 4. Quality of life upgrades, not lifestyle changes. Too many people wanted to take the Whittakers from poverty to luxury overnight. That doesn't work legally or psychologically. Poverty isn't only a lack of money. It's a culture, a survival system, a way of life people adapt to. Sudden radical change overwhelms the body and the brain. Improvement must be gradual, sustainable, routine, familiar, respected. Examples of legal, safe upgrades the trust could pay for. Heating and insulation, stronger flooring and roofing, clean running water, safe plumbing or septic upgrade, accessible bathroom equipment, regular meal deliveries, transportation for doctor's visits, a paid in-home caregiver a few days a week, a secure fence for dogs, pest-free storage for food, mental health support. These are changes that respect who they are, not force them to become something else. Because being poor is not a crime. Being rural is not a crime. Being disabled is not a crime. They don't need to become different to deserve safety. What about the emotional damage? Financial structure won't solve everything. This family, at its core, is brokenhearted. They're connected by a lifetime of isolation, routine, and dependence. When APS removed the three most vulnerable adults, they didn't just take bodies. They took purpose, familiarity, stability, daily connection, and identity. Betty cared for them for decades. Larry protected them for decades. Suddenly, they feel useless. They feel abandoned. They feel punished. To fix that, we're not just talking about guardianship. We're talking about healing. A reunification plan must include scheduled, supervised visits, emotional support personnel, safe environments for family time, consistent updates to reduce fear, the right to maintain sibling bonds. Because disability does not erase love. Isolation does not erase loyalty. Government protection should not erase identity. Can the public still help? Yes, but not the way they think. People want to donate. They want to help. They care. But charity must be smart. Until a trust, nonprofit, and legal framework are created, no public donation should go to individuals or creators. Period. The public can help in other ways. Signing petitions for reunification. Advocating for safe visitation rights. Demanding transparency from APS. Supporting ethical channels, not exploitative ones. Writing newspapers or lawmakers. Sharing accurate information instead of rumors. Money is not the only help that matters. Knowledge is help. Organization is help. Respect is help. How the internet can redeem itself. The internet broke this family. The internet can help fix it, but only through discipline. Imagine a community of viewers who advocate, not for drama, but for justice, not for gossip, but for reunification, not for viral exploitation, but for sustainable dignity. Viewers could become watchdogs, tracking fundraising scams, reporting financial manipulation, demanding receipts and accountability, supporting verified efforts, not hype. This situation proves that awareness isn't enough. Awareness must be paired with responsibility. Final thoughts. Whose story is it now? The Whittakers are not a spectacle. They are not content. They are not a charity case. They are not a pity project. They are a disabled Appalachian family caught between poverty, love, government, and the digital world. Their future depends on people who don't want to use them, but want to protect them. Their reunification depends on structure, not sympathy. Their story should be guided by ethics, not emotion. And if the public truly wants to help, they must support systems that give the Whittakers dignity, stability, security, and family connection without stripping them of their identity, lifestyle, or rights. We are at a turning point. The question isn't who's to blame. The question is who's willing to do the work the right way. Before we close this chapter, one final question. Should the internet be allowed to advocate for a family's reunification and rights? Or should only the government decide what happens to vulnerable adults? Share your thoughts below. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.